All right, we are on record right now. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today is the seventh day of the second month of Adar, and it's also the ninth day of March. And we welcome all the people who have come in, especially um, I can't call him a guest because he's like a brother, but Commissioner David Barlow, and we are very happy to have you here. Commissioner Barlow has been a very good friend and will continue to be a good friend. We really appreciate your solidarity with us here. Huddling down. We have been discussing this discourse. This is a Kabbalistic and Hasidic discussion about a verse in the book of Shemos, in the book of Exodus. We're on page 43, 42, 43. So you're on the right page there. Anyway, so this discourse begins with a discussion about the verse found in the book of Exodus. What did you say? Let's report it. It's in the book of Exodus, the book of Shemos, chapter 23.
Yeah, you got it.
It's in the book of Exodus, chapter 23, verse 25 and 26. That's the footnote. And that's the place where this verse is found. In the verse it says, "And you shall serve your God, the Lord your God. He will bless us." This is not on the page that you have now. I'm just giving a little recap to what we have discussed until now. You shall serve the Lord your God. He will bless your bread and your water. I'm just trying to translate from the Hebrew into the English, so please forgive me here. And he will remove, and I will remove illness from within your midst, is what he says. And then he says, there will not be a barren woman, or a woman that loses her child, a child that's born dead. So there's a few points to these two verses. First of all, it says, you shall serve your God. The word in Hebrew is not just work, but it's serve. That would imply working out, working hard, physical or harsh work. In Hebrew, it's avodah. Avodah means to work something, work it out, and not just you can do work by putting a few ingredients into a pot and turning on a fire. That's work. You could work by getting on the phone and speaking. That can be hard work. You can give a lecture. That could be hard work. And that's not physical. You could also set the table. It takes 3 minutes, and your whole table looks very nice and inviting. That's also called work. But that's not the work that he's talking about over here. That's creativity of those areas. This is called work, where there's challenges. One has to work hard. When one engages in that, and God is talking about the Jewish people coming into Israel, and that he will take care of their needs, and there will be, basically, these are the three needs that a person has, which are health, there'll be no more sickness, that's children, and then there is sustenance. All three of them will be blessed. The condition is when you worship, serve God, serve. Now, the author of this discourse, which is the Rebbe, that's whose picture is hanging on the wall, the grand leader of Chabad, he points out a few idiosyncrasies in this presentation, which leads him to explain it in the following way. He says, if you notice, the verse begins with a third party. Most of the Torah talks in a third party. And God spoke to Moses saying, we know that Moses wrote the Torah because it says so in the Torah. God said to Moses, write these words. So he wrote them according to how God dictated to tell him exactly the words. and the letters. So it should say, and God spoke to me saying, not God spoke to Moses saying. If God is saying these words, then it should say, and I spoke to Moses. But it just says, and God spoke to Moses saying. So there was a third party, a third person narrative in most of the Torah. When it turns to me is in the fifth book of the Torah, book of Exodus, but that's Moses' words. He's saying them. For the rest of the Torah, it's rare to find me. In this verse it says, and you shall worship your God, the Lord your God. That's third party, third person. And he will bless your bread and all of that, and I will remove the sickness from among your midst. He turns to a second person, turns to a first person, right? I will remove. And another point that he makes is that when God says, you shall serve me, that it implies that God seems to be needy. When you have to work something out, and God's asking you to do it, that means that he needs from you to do something. And there are verses all over the place that say, well, God doesn't need this, and God doesn't need that. If you're righteous, he doesn't need it, and if you're sinning, he doesn't. So it doesn't seem to fit in with, like, what does he need exactly? What is this? What does this need? So he explained mystically, Kabbalistically, that if you look around you, you can identify three different elements of energy of God. One of them is out there. Everything has some form of godliness, whether it is the earth and the minerals, the lifeless material, whether it is the things that have life to them, like grass and plants and trees, or whether it is in the animal kingdom, the insects, the animals, the birds, and whatever it might be, and of course the humans. Everyone has a piece of God in them. The piece of God that's in them, though, is different. That which gives life to the earth is very different to that which gives life to humans who are alive and who can think and who can communicate and who can work and move around. And each level has a different form of godliness. That's one godly energy. Whatever is in this universe is fed or is given life by this energy of God. There is a second energy, which is a higher, more a transcendent type of energy. We call it the surrounding energy, as opposed to that energy which enters into each component of this world. That surrounding energy is the energy to which human beings can tap into, by human beings doing what they need to do, whether it's the Jewish people performing the commandments that God asks, or whether it's the rest of the world performing the laws that God asks for them to do, the Noahide laws, which are basic civil and moral and correct ways to serve God. Then everyone can tap into a higher transcendent energy. God gives us that opportunity by serving him. That energy is compared to the rays of the sun. The sun is a burning force of energy, and automatically things come out of it. But when it comes out from where it is, hundreds of, however, millions of miles away, the energy is very intense up there. Only when it gets down to this world, it becomes perfect. And through all the different filters and different manners in which this world can tolerate it, it comes down perfectly to provide light, to provide warmth, to provide growth, and so on, and for the trees, and to provide nourishment to this world. But it takes a while till it gets down here. But it's connected. Its source is the big ball of power. So two things here. First of all, when the rays are in the sun, before they come out of the sun, they are as intense as the sun. And secondly, when the time they get down here, though, they're not as intense. And we can make them even less intense. We can close it. We can hide behind it, so it's not that bright. We could do so many things to filter this sun. Similarly, the energy of God is ready to come here, and we have to draw it into this world. That's our partnership. And when we do activities in this world, worldly activities, godly though, divinely ordained, We take this world and we not just elevate ourselves to that energy, but everything that gives us energy is also elevated. So when you eat a chicken, so the chicken has no chance of getting in touch with that great energy of God, the greater energy. It has within it something, but not where we can go. We have the opportunity to elevate that chicken. Not just the chicken, but all the worms that it ate and all the grass that it ate. Whatever it has within it can also be elevated together with us. That is our purpose. Our purpose in this world is to bring elevation, godliness to this world. By elevating ourselves, we draw down this energy around us. That's the second form of energy. That form of energy is here for us. It wants us. It needs us. That's what God needs. Then there's a third level of godliness. That's the third party. That's me, my essence, God's complete removal from any worldly activity. That energy needs nothing. There's nothing you can do, really, to change. There's no change there. I am the God that doesn't change, says the Isaiah. It's no changes there. That's the level where it is what it is, and that's the complete God. That's the essence of God that is transcendent and above anything. Now, from the fact that he adds the third person into the equation, he says, tell the Jewish people that when so it's God, it's sort of a third person writing, and you shall do this and you shall do that. But when he says, and I will remove, he's talking about his essence, which means that somewhere along the line, even the essence has a chance to be touched. Not that he needs anything, but we can affect something even within the essence of God. Not change anything, but we can get the essence of God to be, which what we call in Yiddish, give him nachas. Nachas is like pleasure. He has as much pleasure as he needs. It's like parents who have everything. Kids are good and everything else. But when the kid comes home with a good mark, or does something good out there, that's the extra cherry on the top kind of thing. So that's when God says, when you do the work on this world, the avodah, the service that's difficult, that touches me. I'm not asking, I don't need that, but it does touch me. That's basically where we stop. We are now on chapter 6, page 42. The concept of avodah, of worship, service, mentioned in the verse, and you shall serve the Lord your God, that concept, that idea, is like the service of a servant. Just imagine a servant. It's hard to imagine servants these days, but just imagine a worker in your house. You hired a worker, could be a South American, could be an American, it could be from a different country, someone who's looking for some work, who doesn't mind getting down on her knees and scrubbing and cleaning and doing what you need, or it even could be someone looking after your pets. Now, somebody who's hired by you to take care of the house, of the animals, of the critters, and whatever it might be. So imagine a servant. We call that person a servant. I know servant may be sort of a harsh term because we don't have those today. But servants in the Torah, there's no word for slave in Judaism, in Hebrew. The term is eved, which is from the same word as avoda. That's what it is. Eved means someone who works hard, someone to serve. So imagine a worker in your house who works hard, and you pay them for their service. That's what a servant is. A servant, it serves you. So it's like the service of a servant. It primarily refers to serving with awe and kabbalat ol. Those are two Hebrew words which mean acceptance of the yoke. Kabbalat means acceptance of, and ol means yoke. The acceptance of the yoke of heaven that comprises the labor of a servant. When the Torah talks about a servant, and especially when the Torah says, you are my servant, Israel, or when it talks about the Jewish people being servants to God.
What were we called in Egypt? What was the Hebrew word for?
Same word, avadim hayinu. Avadim hayinu. That's what we say in the Passover Haggadah. We were servants. There's no word for slaves. So, Um, the term servant, when the Torah uses that term, especially when it's used to describe the Jewish people. The Jewish people are described in the Torah and in the prophets as sons or children, and also as servants. That terminology, when it says servant, it's because God is expecting of the Jewish people to behave like a servant. What does a servant say? A servant says, yes, master, I want you to clear out the garage. He's not going to say, in my opinion, I think we should clean out the other bedroom first. That's not a servant. If a servant says that, you can say, you don't have an opinion, sir. It's my house. You do what I ask you to do. You do what I want you to do. You do what I tell you to do. That's a servant. So a servant is Kabbalah style. It accepts the yoke. Whatever you, yes, master, I'll do it. You want me to clean the garage? Fine. I'll do that. I was in the North Georgia mountains this week, and one of the workers over there, one of the cooks over there, he was on the dairy side, and there was another cook for the meat side. There's two separate kitchens over there, divided with a wall. And I had to do some work on the dairy side. He had finished his work for the day. And he was looking over some papers, and he was standing around writing some things. I said, what are you doing? He says, I was told to be in the dairy kitchen. I'm just trying to look busy. Or else I'm going to be asked to go to the meat kitchen. I'm quite happy here. He wasn't doing anything. I'm preparing my menus, or not menus, how am I going to prepare my macaroni and cheese or something. Things that he knew how to do. He already prepped it. It was all ready to go. What he was basically saying was, I'm just making myself look busy, because when you look busy, then you're doing what the boss asked you to do. He's not going to offer his opinion. He's certainly not going to offer his assistance after he's been working all day. It was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So until he's told to do something else, that's what he's doing. I'm in the dairy kitchen. What are you doing there? No, I'm in the dairy kitchen. That's what I'm doing there. A servant, hopefully, does some work and works the way the owner or the boss, master, says you should go. But I didn't think you would need the garage clean. I do. Do you really? Hello? I asked you to go out to the garage. Can you please go out to the garage? Finished. That's how a servant is. So when God says servant, that is the element of serving God because God said to do it. When God offered the 10 Commandments and the Torah to the Jewish people, the Torah itself says in the same portion as this, almost in the same chapter, very similar, close chapter to this verse, that the Jewish people said, we will do it and we will understand it. The first thing they said was, if you're asking us to do it, we're going to do it. But we won't stay still and just do something. We are going to want to understand what we're doing, which is the next element. A servant does, and the childlike nature says, but why? We always ask the children, always ask why. But why? Or shouldn't we do this? And when they get older, they start suggesting even more. Maybe we could do it this way. Maybe we should do it. They interfere. Why do they interfere? Because they know best. Or because they care. Many times in this house, when the kids say, well, why don't we do it this way? I say, that's wonderful. Go ahead. An idea, a way of doing it, that's easy. Go ahead and do it, and then see what you're going to do. So, a child, though, wants to understand. And when you understand something, you have a much greater appreciation for it. A servant doesn't care what he's doing. You're doing it because he's hired to you. He's here from 9 to 5. He's going to do whatever he's going to do, whatever you tell him to do. It doesn't make a difference if the house is clean or not to him. At 5 o'clock, he or she is leaving, whether it's clean or not, or whether it's finished or not, or whatever. It's and then they go home and they could care less what happened in your house. What's happening in your house doesn't mean anything to them. It's not a devoted. It's a worker. A worker comes and working out from 9 to 5. Any worker sitting in an office, a secretary. It comes 5 o'clock. She can't wait to get out. And it's 5 o'clock. She leaves, runs. Who cares what happened this morning, or if John screamed at Joe, or if that was this? It's irrelevant to them. They're just workers. That's all they are. And these kind of people are not going to climb the ladder. They're going to stay secretaries for 30 years if they stay that long. These are not like children coming into the business who are trying to pull, or trying to move, or trying to grow, or trying to get more. That's the difference between a servant and a child, in basic essence. So when God says servant, he's talking about doing what I want you to do. Have faith in me. I asked you to do it. It's the right thing to do. When God says children, it's a more loving, closer, meaningful relationship. Go understand, go study, go learn, have a connection, a deeper inner connection. So, but when he says servant, serve me, he's talking about serve me with faith that I know best. And I'm the boss, I'm the master. Acceptance of the yoke of heaven that comprises the labor of a servant. A servant shows no consideration for himself and is not an entity of his own. According to Jewish law, if a person hires a servant, in Judaism, and it's very clear, there are three types of servants. There is a servant who is a Jew, and the Jew did something wrong, he stole something, he doesn't have enough money to make retribution, so he is sold to a family, and with that money, he pays off the retribution, and he works for this person for as long as it is, but when the seventh year, sabbatical year comes, he's got to go. Or if he wants to stay, he says, I love my place, I'm happy where I am, then another procedure has to happen. He can only stay till the Jubilee year, which we don't have these days, but stay till the Jubilee. That's why we don't have servants in that category either, because there's no Jubilee year. But he stays till Jubilee year, and then he has to go. There's another way is that he can sell himself. Because he just can't afford to support his family, and the only thing he knows how to do is sweep floors, and that's all. That's one category. Second category is a male who is not Jewish. That's from the servants from around. Now, if that person wants to become a servant in a Jewish household, he's got to accept upon himself certain commandments of the Torah, or else the Jew cannot hire him. He's got to rest on the Sabbath, or he's got certain things he's got to do. And he stays around unless a fight happens, or the master chooses to release him, or he loses a limb that doesn't grow back, like a tooth or something, as a result of his work, then he can be freed. But he is not sold into slavery. Yes, he himself has to come in. You can't just make him work like that. And the third category is a young girl whose father sells her into called a maid, and the father sells her until she reaches the age of bat mitzvah, the 12-year-old. Once she's 12, she's independent, she goes. So she's only a child, and the parents can't look after her, so they sell her for some money. She works in the master's house. Now, on all three, the law is about as clear as can be, and the Talmud expands this, and Jewish law puts this down as law. You must not eat anything and not give it to your servant. You cannot sleep on a soft pillow and they sleep on a hard pillow. In the end, they say whoever acquires a servant is really acquiring a master, because you have to take care of them. You can't scream at them. You can't scold them. You can't be angry at them. You can't. There's so many restrictions that it sounds like getting a servant in your hand. You're buying a servant. No. There are many restrictions. The servants can take this person to court and demand or bring witnesses and levy heavy stuff on this person. So it's not as simple as going to the market and buying a servant. That doesn't happen.
Not any different today.
Correct. Exactly. You have workers in your house as well. Now, there is, though, certain things that the servant has to give up. One of them is independence, which means you have to go where they ask you to go. You have to go with them. They'll have to take you with. Another thing is you can't own any possessions, because he's providing all of your needs in the best way, the same way he is being provided. The master is providing you. Therefore, if you acquire something, well, he's like in charge of you. So if your child brings something home and you don't want that child to have it because you feel that you're looking after that child, you're not trying to teach that child at that point to buy something and acquire it, look after it, then you have the right to take it. For example, If the servant was walking in the street and found a $100 bill, that servant does not have a right to that $100 bill. Why? Because he's taking care of all your needs. If he's taking care of all your needs, then you're not paying him anything other than serving. Then any gift that comes your way belongs to the master. There are rules and restrictions on that as well, but basically the servant does not have independence. It doesn't mean that the master can abuse this guy, and if it happens and they have witnesses, it's immediately to the court. There's no abuse allowed, none of that. But independence is not. You don't have independence. So if the servant says, I want to visit my family in Peru or in Haifa, and you're living in Jerusalem, and the guy says, but I need you, I'm having a major event this week. I can't. Can you visit your family next week? Ultimately, the master is going to be the one that wins out. At the same time, he must not be cruel and whatever. There's all of these laws that you have to treat the servant equally, are there to instill a sense of compassion on that person, on a fellow human being. That despite the fact you feel like you're his boss and you can boss him around, you tell him what to do, you still are very restricted. So don't get carried away. That's what these rules are instilled for. Have respect for your fellow human being. Anyway, so when God uses the metaphor of servant, or in this verse where it says serve, avoda, like the same word as eved, which means servant, then he is talking about a person or a situation where the person does what is supposed to be done because God said so, and there is no real independence here. He is completely nullified to the will of the master. He doesn't have an opinion. He doesn't tell you what color. He can express himself. He can say, are you sure you wanted yellow for that room? Because I thought, perhaps this is just my opinion, that brown might be a better color. Owner says, no, I wanted yellow, and you stick to yellow. No problem. There's no independence here. You don't make decisions. Although he would prefer to be free, which is what every human being would ultimately want, to run their own life and to live the way they want to live, eat food that they make. You might get less money, but you still want to be on your own. You want to be an independent person. He nevertheless constricts and selflessly devotes himself to the master, and therefore performs and fulfills all of his master's wishes. He doesn't have the definition of a servant is a person who does not have independence, who does not choose and decide things. There are people who often ask, does God really care if you are a half hour late for the Sabbath, or if you finish it a half hour early? Yom Kippur, it ends at 8 o'clock? Oh, does it really matter if I finished it at 7:30? I'm so hungry, I'm so thirsty, I'm fasting. You don't choose these things. These things are what are chosen for us. We don't have to answer. That's one of those things where we just say, that's how it is. And we do it because that's how God wants us to do it. There are times where we do have some leeway and independence to choose certain things, how to do them. So you can choose to eat gefilte fish on Friday night, or baked fish, or salmon, or some other kind of fish if you want. That's up to you. You can choose to have a potato kugel, or a noodle kugel, or a zucchini. That's your choice, whatever you like to eat. Those are different customs and foods that are eaten at different times. But when to start a holiday, and when to celebrate a holiday, and when to do this, and when to do that, and how to do it, we're talking about fundamental issues, that's decided. Those are not up for negotiation. That's servant territory. That's what he's saying here. Now, this is why the first and primary service of God, the foundation of all avodah, the foundation of all service to God, is the service of Kabbalah Coffee, of acceptance of the yoke. That comes before anything. If one does not have that in his or her mind, one is unable to properly serve God. If one does not think to himself or herself, I have to do this in the way it's been prescribed, it's very difficult to do it properly. Because ultimately they say, all right, so I'll do it my way. I'll do it the way I want. I choose. That doesn't work when we're talking about avodah, when we're talking about connecting to God by truly working through it. And the truth is, that is a most difficult component because human beings want to be independent. Human beings want to be free. Servants don't want to be in service. They want to go and lie. They want to stand around in the dairy kitchen and write notes. That's what they want to do. They don't want to work. Why should they? And when you get a day off, you get a public holiday, you don't have to go into work. Yay, it's a celebration. That's what they want. Servants don't. The boss and the owner is thinking, where can I get these people back to work because we can get more money? The worker is thinking, leave me the heck alone. I can't bite you at work. I'm not coming in. No, I have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That's my public holiday. Bye-bye. Could care less. Don't bother me. Please don't call. It's very difficult to have this fundamental approach when we are serving God, which is, all right, it doesn't matter, I'll make it up. There's no such thing. When we are in tune with serving God, you have to be in tune completely, always, 24. I was talking to a non-Jewish person the other day, and I said that every Friday at sunset, the Sabbath comes in and it stays until nightfall Saturday night. It's about 25 hours. And there's no driving on that day, on those 25 hours. Driving burns fuel. The Torah says don't burn any fire on the Sabbath. So this person said to me, wow, that is so difficult. I cannot imagine even doing that. Now driving, that's such a restriction. So I said, you're right, it is a restriction. But on the other hand, the benefit of that is that you are now stuck with your family. You're not going anywhere. And the fact that you can't turn on a TV, and we don't on the Sabbath, and we can't turn on the radio or get on the computer, means that you're not going, even your mind isn't going anywhere. You're there, there with your family, and you're there with your community, friends, and neighbors. And that really strengthens the family unit. The family unit also knows that they are not going anywhere. So you sit around on the couch. We don't sit around on the couch that much in this house. If we do, we are. Everybody's got their own little vice. But I can tell you that on Shabbos we sit around on the Sabbath. We sit around on the couch for hours. Not only that, we'll sit around the dining table. Our Friday night meal will go on for 3 or 4 hours. Those who have been finishes late. It's a late night. Pack a sandwich. It's going to be a late night. Why is it a late night? Because it's an opportunity to connect with the loved ones. So I know that the restriction of driving is a harsh one because we're so used to driving. But at the same time, God says don't do it. Okay, I do it because I accept it. But look at the benefit. All right, Rabbi, what about if you're on your own? There's no family around. Wouldn't driving be You have a chair? Oh, you have a big chair.
I'm good.
The ref is here.
The mind jet.
Pour him at the stadium.
Or the big baby.
More likely.
How about a big babe? Anyway, so what if you're on your own? You don't have a family around. Well, then that's the time to connect to your community, with your neighbors. Call them in. Have you called into them? I was here by myself this past Sabbath. I didn't drive anywhere. I didn't walk out this premises here. So that person said to me, wow, that's really beautiful. It sounds very, very beautiful. It does. It is. It's not like once a year or twice a year you have an opportunity to meet with your family and to spend time independent of all the distractions that go on. It is every single week. I said there's no exemptions. There's not a single Friday, Saturday, not in the year. It's every single one of them, no matter what. Year in, year out. Unless a life is in danger, that's different. And the kids know it, the family knows it, and we all look forward to it. It's a day where you sort of tune out and tune in to what's important. I like to explain it like a swimming pool. When you swim, you can't go on the internet, you can't go shopping, you can't play basketball, you can't study. All you can do is swim. Oh, wow, so many restrictions. You can't even wear clothing. Only skimpy, and you get wet. Well, terrible. I once said this to a class of students, and they said, well, dummy, how else are you going to swim? I said, that's the point. The point is to remove every other distraction so you can swim. That's the point. And on Saturday, God says, this is what I want you to do, so you do it. But then you realize the benefit of it. You say, how can I live without it? What kind of a family will I have if we don't have opportunities to sit around and talk and laugh and discuss and eat and just hang together? And we also spend hours, sitting on the couch, and the kids say we're bored. So that's when we sit down on the couch, you see, and then all of a sudden a game breaks out or the discussion starts, and then, so we're not so bored. When we lived in the other neighborhood, they had a lot of friends and neighbors, and they wouldn't be even home in the afternoon. If there's long afternoons, they would just, go to a friend's house. Or friends would come over, that would be. We had 10 kids, and lots of friends. Our house was a very friendly house. We were very, very busy in our house. All right. So servant is a focus, and that is the fundamental beginning. That is the base of worship, of serving God. I will do what God wants me to do. That's the first word the Jewish people said. Do you want this? We will do it. Like a servant. And then we will understand it like a child. The first thing is we need to do it. That is fundamental. That comes first before anything. It is the focus of and the attitude of, I will do it because I'm supposed to do it. So let's see here. Let's go back to the beginning of the chapter, at the beginning of the paragraph. This is why the first and primary service of God, the foundation of all avodah, is the service of Kabbalah, of accepting the yoke. Even when one has not yet transformed his natural self and retains his own wishes, perspectives, and feelings, which means not having developed an appreciation for the master's wishes. And that's how human beings are created. A child wants only a baby, an infant, is born, all it wants is take care of me. Change my diaper, give me food, I'm bored, It's just, and everybody jumps around and gets, huh?
I said, sounds like that.
That's all they want. It's a very focused, selfish focus. That's how we are born. That's how we are created. Our mission is to get out of that and say, what can I do for you? As I was telling my friend John F. Kennedy the other day. So he says like this, ask not what the country can do for you. All right. He nevertheless labors in his work with Kabbalah Coffee. That's a difficult thing. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you just don't feel like it. You have to pray. I don't feel like praying. I'm my mind isn't straight. I don't feel like connecting to God today. It's the Sabbath. I don't feel like doing it. I don't want to go to synagogue. I don't want to come to study on Sunday morning. It's too early for me. They're changing the clock. Are you kidding me? It's now not. I have to get up at 7 o'clock. Come on. I'm too tired today. I don't want to. I don't. Me. That's why there's no iPhones in my pocket, no iPads on my table, no anything. It's not about I. And that's a very difficult concept for people to wrap around, because when you don't feel like you're in the mood, you don't do it. And Judaism says, get yourself in the mood, even if it hurts. Go do it anyway. But it's so expensive to buy kosher food. Yes. And your point is? That's the thing. That's how it is. It's expensive to go to Hawaii as well, don't you know? And you're saving up for that. Well, sometimes you have to push away your own will and do what God wants you to do. It's a very difficult thing. Trust me. I try to do it all the time. But just because I am who I am, it doesn't mean that I don't wake up in the morning and I don't feel like I'm in the mood. It happens to me also. I just know it's ingrained in me. A day won't pass before I do what I have to do. But sometimes, till I get to do it, it is a big time struggle. It's not, don't think that it just comes automatically. It doesn't come automatically to anyone. It's not a struggle to wear this on my head. I've been doing it all my life. It's here. I don't even think about it. Somebody else notices it and wants to talk about it. Great, but it doesn't bother. That's not a business. That's not hard. But when you're not feeling right, or you're not feeling in the right manner, in the right mind, and you want to do something that occupies your mind, and it's a struggle. It is. It is. Don't think my wife doesn't wake up on a Friday morning and say, "Oh, I got to make a whole Shabbos here," and I'm not in the mood. That happens all the time. Nothing is automatic. Which is why it's a constant struggle. It's a service that demands a servant all the time. If you don't understand it or you don't appreciate it, I want you to do it anyway. And in fact, when you do that, it's much greater than if it all is smooth. When all is good, when all is smooth, well, that's good, nice. But when you have to struggle through something, it's much greater appreciated. Much more greatly appreciated. When you see a kid doing all this effort, putting in this work and labor, you feel a lot, it makes your heart sore. Since when it comes to deed, performing mitzvot, performing good deeds, by refraining from involvement in evil and by doing good deeds, a person cannot wait until he changes his essence. You can't wait and say, "Oh, when I become more spiritual, then I will." You can't wait for that. That can't be waited for. Then even while still in his current state, he must go about his service of God with Kabbalah, with just acceptance. I do it because I have to do it. Look at 69, footnote 69. The person must not wait until he has transformed himself into a proper servant of God before starting to fulfill God's commandment with Kabbalat Ol, with acceptance. Since he is from the start required to fulfill the commandments actively and to refrain from violating the prohibitions. So he's got to do it. This is only with respect to deed, however. Intent and devotion are entirely different matter. They are processes that can be worked on and improved over time. What he's saying over here is the action you need to do right away. What your mind is, where your mind is, and how your mind is, that's a lifetime of work. And the more one studies, the more one begins to develop into that type of servant. And there's other layers and other levels, and you become higher and higher, become a more spiritual, more holy person. But that about the action, whether one is in the mood or not, one does it. Oh, I'm not a good person anyway, so who cares? I don't observe the Sabbath, so why do I have to get rid of the leaven before Passover? Why do I have to eat the matzah on Passover? I don't like matzah anyway. One doesn't recluse the other one. Just because one doesn't do one thing, it doesn't mean one shouldn't have to do the other thing. I'm not fasting on this Yom Kippur, so therefore I won't pray. Praying is one thing, fasting is another thing, and to cover the synagogue is another. Each one of them is another process. So the action is involved with doing something. Just go and do it, like a servant. What you have in mind, and what else you're doing, and other things, that's a separate part of the person. So the primary focus is get it done, do it. This is likewise the order of the routine daily service, the daily service to God. The service of the day begins with the recitation of, what's the first thing that's in the Jewish prayer book? The first thing we say on services, the first thing we do, and we say while we're still in bed, as we wake up, Modeh Ani, a short 11 to 12 word prayer. I offer thanks. It begins with the words, I offer thanks. Before you, I'm just going to try and translate into the English. I offer thanks before you, you living and eternal King, that you have returned my soul to me with mercy, and great is your faithfulness. Those are the words, the Hebrew word, Madani lefanecha melech v'kayam, shechazat v'inish masi l'chemla rabba emunasecha. Those are the first words in the prayer book. Those are the first words one recites. The first word of that prayer is Modeh Ani. Modeh means I submit myself. Not just I give thanks, but it's the thanks of submission. And that's the first statement, the first declaration. Whatever you want of me today, I know I'm feeling droopy and I'm feeling and whatever, I got a headache and I'm still modeh ani. You are my master. I am here to serve you. Modeh ani. And the service of the morning prayer begins with hodu LaHashem, the same etymologically related word. Modeh hodu. Hodu means give thanks or offer praise to the Lord, but the word is submission, not just a praise. There are many words for praise in Hebrew. This one, the modeh hodu word, actually means to submit. Thus, before the appropriate contemplation, while reciting the verses of praise, and before the contemplation, while reciting the blessings of the Shema, the seminal prayer of the morning, and the actual recitation of the Shema and the Amidah, which is the other important prayer of the day. Before any of that, we recite Hodu LaHashem, an acknowledgement that reflects a service of God in a manner of Kabbalah Ol, in a manner of submission. I accept you. Before we do anything, we say, I am here. Now, that might be easier said than done, but we do it. We say these words in order to impress upon ourselves that our day should follow the way God wants us to follow. It might not happen, but at least this is how we're setting ourselves out. We're trying to do that. We're trying to begin our day with submission, which is the primary basis of serving God. Submit to God's will. And that will do it for this week.